Most people think the downfall of the van der Linde gang was caused by betrayal, bad luck, or even Micah. But the truth is much darker. Because if you pay close attention to Dutch van der Linde in camp and other interactions, you realize something unsettling. He was never building something stable with his plan to go to Tahiti. He was building something that he had to collapse. And the craziest part? There were signs from the very beginning. Early in the story, Dutch's biggest strength is also his biggest weakness. He never truly plans ahead, he reacts. Every job is the last big one. Every failure has an excuse. Every setback creates a new promise. And at first, the gang believes him, but if you listen closely, you start to notice something's off. Dutch doesn't adapt like a strategist. He adapts like someone refusing to admit he's wrong, and that difference matters more than anything else. Because leaders don't just guide people, they shape reality for them, and Dutch starts reshaping reality to project his ego. Dutch van der Linde always talks about freedom. Freedom from civilization, freedom from rules, freedom from control. But ironically, he becomes the most controlling force in the entire gang. He decides what truth is. He decides who is loyal. He decides who is losing faith. And anyone who questions him slowly becomes an outsider. Even Arthur Morgan starts noticing it. But by the time doubt appears, it's already too late. Because Dutch van der Linde doesn't respond to criticism with reflection. He responds with distance, then suspicion, then replacement. Everything starts collapsing when plans stop working. But instead of adjusting, Dutch van der Linde doubles down. He keeps chasing bigger scores, riskier moves, more desperate escapes, and every failure pushes him further into the belief that the entire world is against him. This is where Micah Bell becomes important, not as the cause, but as the amplifier. Because Micah Bell doesn't challenge Dutch, he feeds him with lies. He confirms what Dutch van der Linde already wants to believe, that he's not wrong, everyone else is. And once a leader believes that, collapse is no longer avoidable, it's just delayed. The most painful part of this story isn't Dutch's downfall. It's Arthur Morgan seeing it happen in real time. Arthur starts off believing in this dream, but slowly he begins to see the cracks, the contradictions, the excuses, the manipulation disguised as wisdom. And Arthur, forced into a brutal realization. The man he followed for over 20 years wasn't becoming worse. He was always like this, just becoming his true self. Arthur Morgan doesn't lose faith in Dutch. He loses faith in the idea that loyalty alone can make someone good. This is the real question. Was Dutch corrupted over time, or was he always the same man, just under less pressure? If you look back carefully, you see it early. The need to be admired, the refusal to admit fault, the belief that he alone understands the bigger picture. Those traits don't appear later in the story. They were always there. The world just stopped rewarding them. And this is when reality stopped matching its vision. He didn't change his vision. He changed how he saw reality. The fall of the van der Linde gang wasn't a sudden betrayal. It was one bad decision. And it wasn't Micah's influence alone. It was the slow collapse of a man who believed his own myth too deeply to let it go. Dutch van der Linde didn't lose control of the gang in one moment. He lost it every time he refused to admit he was wrong. And by the time the world caught up to him, there was nothing left to lead. Just echoes of speeches that once meant something.
She ain't well.